Alright, welcome back ladies and gentlemen to the Chupacabra tutorials channel. I'm your host Larry, and today I'm going to answer the question of how big is Subnautica 2? But more specifically, without looking at maps, how big is the world tree and how far away is it from spawn? Because I got the life pod over there, I've marked out the southern edge of the map of the starter zone, and then I've got the northern edge, and then I've dumped a tadpole at the base of the tree, where like the top of it kind of overhangs. So now I'm gonna fly up to it and I'm gonna answer some of these questions. If you're wondering, the tree isn't just kind of thrown together either. It's quite detailed up close. It's not just like a cardboard cutout. You can literally fly up to the top of it, and I think you can even walk on top of it if you get over there. So I'm gonna fly up to the nearest tentacle right here coming out of it and land on it. I wasn't going to go under the water to tell how tall the world tree is to the bottom of the ocean, because we don't know if that's finished yet or not, or if that's going to be anything like what it's supposed to look like once the game is complete. But I think there's a pretty good bet that this tree isn't going to drastically change position from this location, at least not for a while. So we're just gonna go land on this tentacle, or at least fly next to it. And that should help us judge how far away the world tree is from spawn. So over here by this bottom tentacle, let me turn off a couple things. Let me turn off one of my other tadpoles. Alright, so the life pod's about 22, almost 2,300 meters away from the world tree. I think it's solid too, yeah, it's solid. And then we're about almost 2,000 meters from the northern edge of the starter zone, and that's right up against the red wall that tells you this is the end of the playable area. And then we're almost, well, we're about just under 2,800 meters from the southernmost edge of the game. So that answers that question. Now we just have to figure out how tall this bad boy is. So again, to measure this, I literally just dumped a tadpole in the water. It's sitting roughly just under the surface, so this will be slightly inaccurate by a couple of meters, but that's fine. And what we're gonna do is we're just gonna go directly overhead of the tadpole, and then I'm going to just go straight up. So it looks like the world tree is reasonably detailed. It's got a bunch of different plants growing on the top of it. There's not like a bed of dirt or soil or anything to kind of make this into an island. But there is some concept art of this game right now that basically makes it look like there will be surface level island action, but it's not going to be like an island hanging out off in the distance anywhere. It's actually going to be the world tree itself that has like waterfalls coming off of it and different creatures that live on it, so that you can maybe explore its tendrils and its different branches as different biomes unto themselves. But I don't know if they're going to do that. Currently it's just concept art that was released ahead of the world tree and Subnautica 2's entry into early access. So right now, it looks like our starting area over there is sort of on the southern half of this gigantic square, and there's a whole other half of this gigantic square workspace that we could be working from right now. So it definitely looks like the world tree is in the center of the game right now. And that there's definitely a lot of space to work with here. Especially because, like, we're really only taking up this much space on this massive grid square. Oh, and I can kind of see part of the spawn too from here. That's crazy. Okay, whoop. We are clipping into the tree. I don't want to do that. Let's back up a little bit. Alright, so the answer is we cannot stand on the larger part of the tree, which maybe has dashed my hopes of building a base here right now. But, you know, whatever. So I'm just curious how tall the world tree is, although as we get further and further up here, it's getting slower and slower when we're going up. Alright, once we're kind of level with the top of the world tree, though, that's when I'm going to stop, and that's when I'm going to take my final measurement. So my camera is more or less at the top. Give it a little extra oomph. It looks like the world tree is about 2,686 meters tall. Kind of give or take, considering I can't really walk on it, because I don't think the top of the world tree is solid. So we can't really stand here and test it. But what is at the top of the world tree? I guess it's just these big fronds, like it's a gigantic flower trying to open. In fact, there might not even be anything up here. They might not have even finished the inside of this thing. I don't think anyone's meant to look at the top of the world tree, but we're gonna peek. I'm coming in, buckaroo. Yeah, I guess there's nothing in here. Just some stuff clipped in from outside. Well, that's disappointing. Well, darn. Alright, well, that kind of gives you an idea of the size of this thing. It's about... I kind of like walk up here. It's around 2,686, some such height, depending on how you measure this angle. Maybe you could call it an even 2,700 meters just for fun. So there is that. Alright, so I mean, we have kind of an idea now how big this big bad boy is. And roughly that the height is 2,686-ish meters directly above. Or, I don't know, so somewhere around there. And yeah, I mean, look at this view. We can, if I turn off all these signals, turn off the life pod and these buoys and the tadpole at the base, you can see all the way back to where the spawn zone is. And that's, you know, off to the west is where that spawn zone is. And it's probably like, you know, that size. In fact, let's turn back on those signals that I built, the southern and northern half. So that's the tip, that's the butt, and then it goes over here and like dead ends over here. So compare that to the build space in this file that this whole thing represents, and the fact that the world tree sits in the middle. That's gigantic. So there's definitely the availability that this game is going to be massive later on compared with previous games. And we're basically from the starting zone to here, like, this is not even like the full size of Subnautica 1, because the southern edge is like 3,000, not even, like, it's only like 2,000 to get over here. So Subnautica end to end is like 4,300 meters. So we definitely have a lot of room to work with here, so I think what I'm saying. And to put this into perspective, Subnautica 1 again was 4,300 meters from from tip to tip, furthest point from furthest point. Subnautica below zero is 2,458 meters, although the map that I was shown did not have tip to tip, so I kind of just guessed which tip to tip that they were measuring. And then Subnautica 2, so far, from furthest tip to furthest tip in a straight line, is 2,431 meters wide, and that's just the intentional playable area. So I think that's interesting, and it kind of puts into perspective, because we're literally at the top of the world right now, exactly how big Subnautica 2 is already, and we're only in early access. I'm a little disappointed there isn't some more detail inside of the world tree, but again, we're not really meant to be up over here. I don't know if we're never going to be allowed up over here, because again, this does have some concept art that shows that the tree is the island. And I'm starting to think that maybe before we're even done here, that we might be circling the world tree on a couple of different directions here in like a big arm around it before we can get into the area beneath the world tree and start exploring whatever is supposedly sleeping underneath the tree, the veps or whatever they're called. So that'll be it for this one, ladies and gentlemen. This has been a brief look at a close-up of the world tree. I hope you found this interesting and kind of a new perspective on the overall size of Subnautica 2. I've been your host, Larry. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you next time. Bye, everybody, and have a good one.